Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to look at how to authenticate to github.com on HTTPS protocol using personal access token, also known as PAT. PAT is a secure way and the recommended way by GitHub to access any repository on GitHub. Now if you're only interested in authentication, refer to the timestamp, watch the authentication which is initially in the video, and feel free to stop the video. But if you are interested in knowing the details, do watch the entire video. With that being said, let's get started. So first we'll go to github.com. Once you're on github.com, you can click on your profile pic on the right hand side, go to settings, and then at the very bottom if you scroll you can see developer settings, and there you can see personal access tokens. Click on it, tokens classic, generate new token. I will create a token. Okay, it's saying passkey. I don't have a passkey setup, so I will log in and then give a name for your token. I will give demo as a name, any name is fine. Set an expiration for that token, by default is 30 days. I will leave it at that, and select the proper scope for the token. So I will select repo. You can go through all the scopes and select the appropriate ones for your use, and then click on generate token. It gives a warning that make sure to copy your personal access token now. You won't be able to see it again, so be sure to copy and place the token in a secure place. So because after this, once you refresh or go to any other page and come back to this one, you won't be able to see it again. If you're part of an organization on GitHub, and single sign-on is configured for that organization, you should be able to see a drop down here or a button here to configure single sign-on. That means you give this token appropriate authorization to that organization. I'm not part of any organization, so I don't see any drop down here, but if you are, you should be able to see that, and it's very straightforward. So let's copy this token and go to git bash terminal. Now git bash comes with git for Windows installation. If you don't have git for, I'm using a Windows machine, I use git for Windows. If you don't have it, install it and you should get git bash with it. So let's go to git bash, and in git bash, as you can see, sorry, I forgot to show you the repo. Let's go back to github.com and let me show you the repo that we will be cloning. Auth demo. I have made this repo private. If it's public, you should be able to clone, but you won't be able to push until you provide your login or you have the rights to push or push to the repo. I have made this private, so when cloning it will ask me for login credential and I will provide my personal access token, and this is the repo that we are going to clone. So let's go back to git bash, and once you go to git bash, let me show you, this is an empty folder, and let me clone that repo. Git clone and HTTPS github.com. coding for demo is my username because this repo is available there, and auth, okay, sorry, I forgot, auth demo.git. So auth demo is my GitHub repository, coding for demo is my username, and github.com is the domain name. I'm trying to clone this repo, and when I hit enter, you should be able to see something called git-credentials manager pop up, and that should look something like this. Yeah, so you paste your token, you go to the token, it by default browser or device is selected, you go to token, provide your personal access token, and you should be able to sign in. Now you go back to git bash and you can see that we have successfully authenticated to GitHub. Depending on the scopes you provided to that token, you should be able to clone, push or pull anything with that repo depending on the scopes. So that concludes our authentication demo. Now if you are interested in knowing the details how this authentication works, do watch the full video, but also feel free to stop the video if you are only interested in knowing how to authenticate. So with that said, let's get into the details. If we go now details wide, what you see on this slide is how this works. Git basically uses something called credentials helpers. There are a few of them which come with Git, but you can also write your custom credentials helper. I am going to use, by default it uses manager, which is short for Git credentials manager. Now Git credentials manager is essentially a revamp of the legacy Git credentials manager. It supports all advanced features like multi-factor authentication and OAuth. Also, it securely stores the credential in Windows Credential Store. Now WinCred is Windows built-in Windows Credential Manager. It also uses Windows Credential Store for storing the token, but it does not support the advanced features that Manager supports, so I use Manager instead of WinCred. When it comes to store, a credential helper that basically stores your credentials in plain text in a file on your disk. So that is not very secure until you have the right permissions set up for that file. So be very cautious of this credential manager. Caches your credentials in memory for by default for 15 minutes, so you don't have to provide your login details again. OX keychain is something available to Mac users. On Mac, do use keychain because that's a secure way to store your credentials. With that being said, let's get into the demo. So open git bash. I will go to git bash. In git bash, if you type git config get all credential.helper, you should be able to see all the credential helper that have been configured for Git. Now if you're not familiar with Git configuration, I have made a special video for Git configuration. You can watch that to know everything about Git config. So I'm not going to repeat that here, but if you are having any difficulty in following the commands or what they do, be sure to watch Git configs video. So now the way let's add a store to as a Git credential helper. So I will go ahead and add store git config, add credential helper, and I'm going to add store. Means it was going to store in a file on my disk all the credential. So let's go ahead and add not a git repository directory. As you can see, by default it tries to store it in the local git configuration. I will just add it to the global, and I can do that by just saying global, and it should be able to add. Now if I repeat my command to see all, I should be able to see store. And the order here is important, because when taking the credential, the git credential manager takes the credential and git passes that credential to all the credential helper. So it will pass to here it will pass to manager and store, and then that credential manager will store it accordingly. When asking for credential, the first one to provide the proper credential to git will be used for that repo. In this case, if manager provides, it won't ask the store for the credential, and if manager does not have the credential, it will go to the store. So order is very important. In the later slide, I will show if you want to configure a different credential helper for different domains, you can do so. And also there are various ways of doing that. If you're not familiar with that, do watch the git configs video. So that way I have added store. Let's go back to GitHub. Basically I will go to GitHub, and once you're on GitHub, go to, I will add a new token, go to settings, go all the way at the bottom to developer settings, personal access token. I will try to generate a new token, and this time I will say store. Any name, you can give any name. I will just store, and then I will generate that token. I will copy this token. It's the same process. I will go to git bash, and I will I will remove this auth demo because I've already cloned, and you can see that it's available here. I will remove this repo auth demo. Now it won't ask me for credential because it has already stored that. If you try to clone at this point, it won't ask me for credential again, and this happens due to your credentials being stored in Windows credential store. So let me open that and show you how it looks like. Not this one, yeah, this one. So if you go to control panel and go to credential manager, you should be able to see, let me open the magnifier tool so that you can see. What's the shortcut? I forgot the shortcut, sorry. Yeah, I remember. So if you see at the Windows credential, you should be able to see that here you should be able to see your github.com, but I'm not able to see because I have not refreshed. If you go to control panel, you go back to credential manager and go to Windows credential, you should be able to see something called github.com, and when you expand, it will show you your username and password. It won't show, but it is cached. If your password changes for any reason, you can go ahead and remove this from here, and it will add the new one to the credential store when you try to clone a repo. So you can see we'll remove this. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And we will close this. So we have removed that from the credential store, and now we'll try to we will remove this repo and we'll try to clone again. So this time it should give you the pop-up, and you should be able to see git credential manager, go to token. It should look same like before. The credential manager should look like this in the pop-up, and I will copy my new token and then paste it in the git credentials manager. So, and sign in and go back to git bash, and you can see that it was cloned successfully. I will also show you the credential manager. Let's go to that and let's refresh it. Go to credential manager and Windows credential, and you should be able to see github.com here. And once you expand this, you should be able to see your credentials have been stored here. So now let's move on to more details, some advanced commands. And as you can see on your screen, if you would like to store a different helper for each domain, you are able to do that with the command shown here, and also at the same time you can customize. For example, store let me show you. Let me go to git bash and show you what the store looks like. It by default it will, I'll go to my home directory, and then by default it will store your credential in git credentials, and you can see that it has stored username and the token here and what domain this token belongs to. So if you want to customize this file, by default it will store in this file. If you would like to customize the file, you can do so with the by providing file option or argument to store credential helper like as shown on this screen. If you choose the cache as a credential helper, by default the duration is 15 minutes. You can expand to 1 hour by providing timeout option. Now it's in seconds. Here you can see it's 3600 seconds, that is 1 hour. Credential helper manager is just git credentials manager, and you can configure it. Once you add it, you should be able to see, you should be able to use those credential helper. Your configuration file should look something like this. If you're not familiar with git configuration, be sure to watch my git configs video that explains everything in detail. And to see all the helpers that are configured for a particular domain, you should be able to run the command shown at the bottom and be able to see all the credential helpers. I have also mentioned all the commands in description below, so you can also copy the commands and run that way. Finally, I will leave you with some notes that I'm using a Windows machine, and I have git bash, git for Windows installed. I use git bash. On git bash, the path for git credential manager is the one shown at the top. There is something called git. If you cancel out of the credential manager, git ask pass kicks in and shows you a command prompt for username and password. In password, you can provide your personal access token. I have already gone over the nodes, which is order matters, in which order you add the helpers. It's very important because Git will try to get the credential from the first helper that can provide it. Security wise, just one note, as I mentioned before, be cautious with the store helper as it saves credentials in plain text. So ensure your file system permissions are set appropriately. And last point is about multiple credentials helper. Using multiple credential helpers can provide a flexible and efficient way to manage your Git credentials, so you can use that. But I don't use multiple credential helpers because I only use github.com, so there hasn't been a need. But if you are using multiple domains and there is a need for configuring a different helper for each domain, you can configure that. Thank you for watching this video. Bye. Stay tuned for more videos.